making headlines around the globe. First off, we start with Nigeria having a new electoral law. The new Electoral Law Amendment Bill 2026 was signed by President Bola Tinubu at the Presidential Villa in Abuja after weeks of heated debates within lawmakers, CSOs and the public. The president says Nigerians must have confidence in the electoral system, but also warns that the country must confront its technical limitations, stressing the need to avoid glitches during elections. Speaking with newsmen after the ceremony, Senate President Godswill Akpabio and the Electoral Act 2026 amendment would ensure that every Nigerian's vote counted. Our State House correspondent Adesua Moran reports.
After weeks of deliberation and public scrutiny, Nigeria's Electoral Act has now been amended, reworked, and signed into law. At the ceremony, President Tinubu says he closely monitored the National Assembly's work while urging Nigerians to trust the system.
I followed keenly what you are doing. The essence of democracy is to have, very solid brainstorming discussions committed to national development and nation building, the stability of the nation. It's not as important as the history aspect of this. What is crucial is the fact that you manage the process to the extent there will be no confusion, no disenfranchisement of Nigerians, and we are all going to see democracy flourish. It is time that we have confidence in our system.
It comes after both chambers of the National Assembly on Tuesday took a fresh look at the Electoral Act 2022 Repeal and Enactment Amendment Bill 2026 after several considerations in the last 2 weeks before finally passing the bill and transmitting same to the president for his assent. Tinubu says what matters most was preventing confusion or voter disenfranchisement.
No matter how good a system is, it's managed by the people, promoted by the people, and the result is finalized by the people. In fact, for final results, you are not going to be talking to the computer, you are going to be talking to human beings who will announce the final results.
Addressing the controversy around electronic transmission in real time, the president was clear that technology must not replace human accountability.
And when you look at the crux of various arguments, maybe Nigeria should question our broadband capability. How technically are we today? How technically will we be tomorrow to answer the call of, either read time or no?
When someone fails to pay their property taxes, the government actually creates certificates on that debt. You can buy that debt from the government by paying.
And as long as you appear personally as a manual voter in any polling booth, but ballot paper is given to you manually, you decide in a corner and thumbprint the party of your choice, you cast your vote without hindrance and any interference. Ballots are subsequently counted manually, sorted and counted manually. It's just the arithmetic accuracy that is entered into from easy eating. It's the manual, essentially. And the transmission of that manual result is what we're looking at. And we need to avoid glitches. I'm glad you did. interference, unnecessary hacking in this age of, computer inquisitiveness. Nigeria will be there. We will flourish. We will continue to nurture this democracy for the fulfillment of our dream for prosperity and stability of our country. I thank all of you very much.
The Electoral Act amendment has been one of the most contentious legislative efforts in recent months. Civil society groups and opposition figures had pushed for a mandatory real-time electronic transmission of election results from polling units. Senate President Godswill Akpabio says the new provisions are historic, helping Nigerians detect any alterations of results after they leave the polling unit.
We took cognizance of the peculiarities of the country. We did not allow too much outside interference, and we're very patriotic in our submissions. And at the end, we believe strongly that what the president has just assented into Act of Parliament will make for a better election in the future, and will also lead to prosperity, and will also lead to transparency of the electoral process.
The Speaker of the House of Representatives acknowledges that the changes could shift the 2027 election timetable to January, but argues that the adjustments were made for greater good.
However, there is one area that I'm sure he forgot to mention, and that is the number of days notice, which was earlier in the 2022 Act, 360 days. Now we have seen the wisdom to reduce it to 300 days. And this will inadvertently translate to holding the presidential and National Assembly elections in January 2027. And that will technically avoid conducting election during month of Ramadan of 2027.
With presidential assent secured, attention now turns to the Independent National Electoral Commission, which must implement the new framework ahead of the 2027 elections. Adesua Omoye, Arise News.
That's the sound of an American oil company hard at work. Want to be a part of it? Listen up.
Hello, my name is Adam Ferrari.
Thank you, Adesua. Well, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has said vote trading of any sort would not be tolerated during Saturday's area council election in Abuja. It has therefore mandated the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission and the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, to deploy their men to polling units for the Federal Capital Territory Area Council elections holding on Saturday. The electoral umpire added that any individual found buying or selling votes would be apprehended and dealt with in accordance with the law, insisting it would not tolerate vote trading. INEC Chairman Professor Josh Amupiton stated this yesterday in Abuja at the stakeholders meeting ahead of the elections. Amupiton pointed out that the FCT Area Council election remained the only local government election conducted by INEC. In other news, President Bola Tinubu has issued an executive order to safeguard and enhance oil and gas revenues for the Federation, curb wasteful spending, eliminate duplicative structures in the critical sector of the national economy, and redirect resources for the benefit of the Nigerian people. The President, according to a release issued by his advisor on information and strategy, Bayo Ononuga, signed the order in pursuance of Section 5 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as amended. In the same vein, it stated that the directive seeks to restore the constitutional revenue entitlements of the federal, state, and local governments, which were taken away in 2021 by the Petroleum Industry Act, PIA, explaining that the PIA created structural and legal channels through which substantial federation revenues are lost through deductions, sundry charges, and fees. Under the current PIA framework, NNPC retains 30% of the Federation's oil revenues as management fee on profit oil and profit gas derived from production sharing contracts, PSCs, profit sharing contracts, and risk service contracts. Coming to Lagos, the Police Care Initiative has concluded in Lagos, while the program continues for drivers across the state. The Lagos State Police Command has commended Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu for approving free eye screenings, corrective glasses, substance abuse prevention, and Lagos State Drivers Institute training for officers. The Commissioner of Police, Olohundari Jimo, described the initiative as timely, noting that although officers are healthy at recruitment, the demands of policing can strain their eyesight over time. He confirmed that 1,000 police personnel and their families were screened, received glasses and professional medical advice to maintain good eye health.
We are happy that today they've concluded the screening for 1,000 police personnel and that of their family to ensure that those who may have defective eyesight, maybe as a result of refractive error or as a result of stress that is accompanied by the hazard of the job, are corrected.
The result of the Dr. Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu initiative on health is that our police officers are excited. They are excited in the sense that most of them are able to see clearly now from what they have said earlier. Some of them had complained on reading, sight, both day and night vision. So all thanks to our visionary leadership, Governor, the father of governors in the country, Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu.
This has been my problem for a long time now. For over 7 months now, I detect this. But come today, come tomorrow, there is no way I can achieve it. But today, I achieve it with a platter of gold. I feel good. I feel happy. Don't you see that I am looking as if I am clamping a staircase? I'm happy.
Greg, we need to talk.
No time, got sales calls to summarize.
You really need to switch to Monday CRM. It has built
I'm happy. It's good to see, our servicemen looking so good, policemen looking happy, excited at the fact that they've been able to be given another opportunity to see more clearly. But Rufai, I'm so sorry that I missed the opportunity for you to dance Kilewu for 30 minutes live on air. You had put a bet on the table that you would dance if the president does not assent to the bill. Now the act. Well, let's take the stories, let's divide, let's dissect, let's get into them this morning. Dr. Bati, good to see you. You're still in Abuja. We miss you here in Lagos. Well, please, your take on the stories this morning.
Good morning. Okay, first let me start with the executive order. Good morning. The executive order that was signed by the president with regard to all oil revenue being paid directly into the federation account. Well, the objective of that is to plug leakages, ensure greater efficiency for the benefit of the people of Nigeria. The president stressed in that executive order, and to ensure greater transparency in terms of revenues accruing, and to protect the interests of the federal, state, and local governments of Nigeria. If money paid into the federation account will go into the distributable pool under Section 162 of the Constitution. So in that regard, the interest of the three levels of government will have been taken care of. Now, the issue about NNPCL now is not going to get, almost 50% of what it gets. 30%, as running expenses, so to speak, and then an additional 20% also from PSCs and other contracts. Now, the MDGIF is also not going to get the percentage it gets from the crude oil proceeds. Here is the question in that regard. How will these agencies now be funded? NNPCL is not covered under the budget framework of the federal government of Nigeria. Where then does that leave the NNPCL in terms of its operational expenses? Would the NNPCL now be covered under the budget? And with the budget and all the problems we'll be having with cash backing, that may in fact achieve the counterproductive objective of making it difficult for NNPCL to function smoothly. The same thing for the regulatory authorities in the oil and gas sector. Those regulatory authorities also are not covered within the Appropriation Act. So whatever money is available to them that have been set aside for them within the PIA will no longer go to them. The president has said that this new regime will start with effect from February 13, which means that, the order is even backdated.
If you own company stock that's gone up tremendously in value since you've owned it, there's a good chance you'll pay more in taxes than you have to. We can help fix this problem. We often see this. Founders.
Now, when will it end? What is the timeline that government is looking at? And also, we're told that the federal government has powers. Yes, there's no argument about that. Under Section 5, and also the fact that it's the federal government that has authority over minerals. But I thought that the suggestion that the PIA is going to be reviewed, that is where the federal government, in my view, should have started from. Yes, there are issues in the PIA, not even in terms of remittances, but also in terms of other details, community interests, funding for the various business. Maybe we should have started with reviewing the PIA, cleaning it up, involve the representatives of the people, that is the National Assembly, in the process, and then have an amended PIA before we start this process, and take care of the interests of not just NNPCL, but also the regulatory agencies. The problem with the regulatory agencies is that if this order goes on for so long, it may in fact translate into corruption in the regulatory agencies, because the regulatory agencies will now have to depend more on the same people that they are supposed, or the same agencies, the same entities that they are supposed to, regulate. So there are issues there to be reconsidered, in my view, even if it is to expedite action. As for the Lagos State government, kudos to the Lagos State government. I imagine that this free eye care for policemen in Lagos State, which ended yesterday, 1,000 persons benefited from that. And, well, it's exciting to see that some policemen are saying they are excited, they can see clearly now. Well, that's interesting, because some of our policemen sometimes, when they stop you, particularly those ones that check vehicle particulars, even when your particulars are complete, what they are seeing, they will say they have not seen it. In fact, they will even open your gloves compartment to be looking for what is already in their hands. Maybe now that they will see clearly, we will have better relations. And also, those ones that control traffic, sometimes, in fact, they contribute, those traffic police, they even contribute to the congestion, because the driver is seeing something else. The man controlling traffic is also seeing another thing, just creating confusion and bottlenecks. And it is just as well that this same Lagos State government has done the same Sanwo-Olu Eye Care initiative for drivers. So with drivers seeing clearly and policemen seeing clearly, that will improve road travel in the city of Lagos, I want to assume. Finally, to the big elephant in the room, which is the Electoral Act 2026. That's the new title now that it has been signed. The president used such words as trust, as confidence, as efficient delivery. Now, this is the main expectation of Nigerians, that the elections in 2027 will be free, fair, and credible. However, the opposition parties are not happy with the speed with which the president has assented to what was previously a bill, now an act. And that's why the PDP is protesting, the ADC is protesting. The Senate president says everybody's fears have been accommodated. And the Speaker of the House says, well, the election will now most likely be in January or December. And so those who are complaining about fasting, either for Muslims or Christians, their fears have also been allayed. But I do not imagine, as I pointed out yesterday, that those who are opposed to sections of that act will stop making noise. Therefore, the responsibility, because the president also used the word responsibility, is on government, and particularly INEC, to ensure that they rebuild trust, they build confidence, those same words that the president used, and that the elections in 2027 are free, fair, and credible. That will be the major expectation of Nigerians. Anything to the contrary would, further controversialize the process. And President Tinubu should see a free and fair, credible election
as his major legacy that he would love to be remembered by.
All right, thank you very much. Legacy talk this morning, Rufai.
Okay.
Could this administration, could President Bola Ahmed Tinubu leave a legacy of free, fair, credible elections for the Nigerian people? Your take on the stories this morning.
Anyway, I don't think President Tinubu will leave a legacy of free, credible election with this law that they've just signed. I think the law is shambolic, and when people speak up for their democracy, it's not noise. They're speaking up for the future. Because when they see their country being eroded and people taking over the country, it is a very sad one. But let me give President Tinubu some kudos this morning before I hit him hard, like I will always do. As regards this executive order, President Tinubu scored a good one. Let's dial back historically. It was under President Obasanjo we started making these allowances for NNPC to retain funds here and there. And this was against Section 5, Section 44(3), and Section 162 of the Constitution.
Watch this. This is how pickpockets in the United States are stealing wallets right now. 2 seconds. Gone. Most people...
On this, federal government is the sole shareholder of the NNPC, so it can do as it pleases. And President Tinubu is totally spot on. And despite the fact that people try to wriggle themselves and force this NNPC retention in the PIA, does not make it right. So President Tinubu, on this, kudos to you. And for people that are arguing, where will NNPC get the funds to work with despite this? No! They still have 20% of the working capital funds, the profit on working capital there with them. They can use that to manage themselves. So on this, President Tinubu, you have done well. When you do well, I will say you have done well. On this, kudos to you. But what I would just say is, now that you are getting all this money to the Federation account, you must be able to account for it too. It's not the one that you will not release money for budgets. It's not the one that Ministry of Health will have over 200 billion for capital expenditure. It's only 36 million you release it, and at the same time, you can release 500 million for some strategic communications in some people that are doing media spin for you. Or you can spend 150 million on an event, on health initiative, when you only release 36 million for, what is it called? For the CAPEX spending in the Ministry of Health. So it's not that when the money comes to the Federation account, we will not judiciously use it to service budgets. But on this, you are correct. Now, let me hit you at President Tinubu. This is an aberration to democracy. A president signed a bill in less than 24 hours. Did he go through the Attorney General? Did they read it? What bill did they even sign? You see, these are the questions, and that's why I'm sorry, we have a good as dead opposition in this country. If we had an opposition that is thriving, by this morning, they should be the one running around filing court cases. I think this opposition should go and even learn how to do opposition from the APC, because they don't look ready and organized for me. Who looked at the bill? Who vetted the bill? Did the president himself read the bill that he signed into law? Or they just rushed it for him? And that's why I knew this was going to happen. That's why I was daring you yesterday that if he does this, I will dance Kelewu. Have they gone through the prideful process? What did they harmonize? What is even in the bill as we speak today? What was signed? Because this is the same country, Ayo, that we've had discrepancies between what was signed and what was gazetted. Till today, the National Assembly, this same rubber stamp National Assembly, cannot account for the tax bill. They set up a committee since December. It's only if the committee will bring out their report tomorrow as regards the contradiction of what was gazetted or not gazetted. That's when we will know. The National Assembly is not serious. They are not serious. I don't consider them as serious. I don't consider them as representing the interests of people. They are rubber stamp. The National Assembly that sings on your mandate, we shall stand. I'm sure they were singing it to President Tinubu. On your mandate, we shall stand, Jagava. Is that on National Assembly? The last time we had National Assembly in recent time, probably maybe under Bukola Saraki.
So wait, what's the catch? That's what most people ask when they hear about SMUD's brand new home battery incentive.
Because getting paid up to $8,000 up front to put a backup battery in your home does seem too good to be true.
But guess what? It is true. SMUD just made a massive change to how solar and batteries work and how they're paid for.
That's right. This brand new
So we have not gone through all of that. Till today, are you sure INEC has even seen what the National Assembly passed? The INEC that is going to use the law. What we should focus on now is to look at the guidelines. What will account for
the provisions around having no network. What will warrant an incident form? We don't know all of those things in the guidelines. The INEC presiding officer can still send the election results. Can we account for timestamp in the guidelines so that even if there's no network there, they can still send the results? President Tinubu is talking about glitch. He's talking about trust, talking about transparency in a law that does not account for the people, that does not respect the views of people, that they are calling noise. Isn't that hypocritical? We already know that they are going to be shenanigans in this 2027 election. He's talking about glitch that only happened in the presidential election that favored him, that INEC has not been able to talk about it today. It's not only in the presidential election the technical glitch happened. Did it happen in the Senate and the House of Rep election that happened on that same day? So let's stop deceiving ourselves. Let's stop being hypocritical. Let's call a spade around this country about the shenanigans that have happened. That's why we should weep for this country. And you know what hurts me the most? It's only people like us that are talking here. We don't have opposition. If we had opposition, they will have been filing court cases even about the procedures.
All right. I agree that the opposition parties have a role to play, but I do believe also that this environment, this atmosphere has been very intolerant and not conducive for even the opposition to thrive. And that's why we continue to speak about an opposition, a viable opposition in a democracy that must work. It almost seems as if they've been gagged under this administration, and that doesn't speak very well for democracy to thrive in Nigeria. But let me speak about now that the president has assented to the Electoral Amendment Bill Now Act of 2026. What are some of the things that we should look at? Because whether we like it or not, and I'm glad that when we were speaking to Barrister Mike Guinea yesterday, we were like, it's already been, the deed has been done. How do we then work forward from this? We have criticized the process. It's sad that despite the rising up of Nigerians, the public outcry, the civil society organizations, the Nigerians who were bold enough to come out and, great standing Nigerians to come out, we had Dr. Obiezek Kwesili, we've had Professor Patu Tomi, we've had Mr. Olisa Gbakoba, a number of people come out to speak strongly, and the opposition parties against this particular bill, but nevertheless, it has been passed. So how do we move forward? How do we make it work? Because at the end of the day, we have the soul of a nation to save. This is the democracy that we have currently, and one way or the other, we have to be able to see how within the imperfect structure or system that some might describe it as, something has to happen. So what are some of the things I will highlight this morning? Number one is that INEC must rise up. All eyes on INEC. Yes, there's a trust deficit between the people and INEC based on precedents, based on previous election cycles, based on the fact that till today, despite the cries and the calls for a report on the technical glitch or what happened, whether INEC or the people have not been able to give an explanation to the satisfaction of the Nigerian people. But we are still hopeful that INEC could do right by the Nigerian people by executing and prosecuting a free, fair, and credible election. They now have the legislative framework to work with. Despite the limits of the framework, what has been said, the intent of the lawmakers, as you heard the Senate President say, is that, they've made provisions for transmission of results, only providing that there's network coverage. So can INEC give the people an opportunity to decide who they want as leaders in the next election? We don't want to see complicity between INEC and the government because INEC is supposed to be independent. So can they ensure that they have within the remit of this law the opportunity to deliver the best election a Nigerian has seen under the post-military rule in the new democratic dispensation from 1999. Can we trust INEC on that level? Professor Josh Amupito has come out to say that the FCT council elections this weekend will be free of vote buying. Now, some people said during the last elections that happened that the Anambra elections that he didn't have enough time. So this perhaps is the first true test as leader of INEC, having had enough time to settle into the job and see how we can actually have elections run. So this election this weekend is quite critical. It's important. Let's see to what extent they will transmit results or send results to the portal. Let's see to what extent he would back this tough stance on vote buying. Let's see to what extent they will prosecute criminals who are seen to flout some of them provisions of the law. So all eyes on INEC on this one. Can INEC do the job? We looked at the judiciary. Unfortunately, many people feel like Barrister Mike Igini spoke about that yesterday, that they failed the people. We looked to the legislature. A number of people feel like they failed the people. We looked to the executive. He assented. A number of people feel like they failed the people. Can we now look to INEC? Well, let's see what happens in the long term or in the short term. Then second of all is a critical point made by Barrister Mike Igini yesterday about the protection of INEC presiding officers at the polling booths. That based on the disgruntled nature of the fact that people feel that there might be now these glitches that would happen on network connectivity now disappears on the day, that the people might want to take laws into their own hands, and that the protection of these officers, who are many of them are NYSC young Nigerians, that we ensure that we protect them from any crowd rising up against them. I think this is quite critical. We do not want to see loss of lives or people being targeted as a result of election cycles. So that's another area that we shouldn't miss out. Let us see how we can strengthen the process to ensure that our young Nigerians that we send out to different parts of the country to preside over election polls will be protected. The final point is that I expect that rather than we are able to, within the time frame between now and next election cycle, improve infrastructure to ensure that network coverage is actually better, that can serve the people. Yes, we have the data on ground that about 98% coverage, 2G at least network across the country. Can we see that work? I mean, I was quite taken aback to see the president talk about, technology not replacing people. Technology is not supposed to replace human beings. It's supposed to enhance the work of human beings. It's supposed to enhance and make the process more transparent and more viable. So what we are asking for is within the time frame, rather than give excuses. When he came into government, he had talked about the strengthening of the network areas, coverage areas. Can we see that work being done? Because what we don't want come election, now looking like January 2027, are excuses. We have seen the provisions of the law. We have seen the limitations of the law. We have heard the agitations of the people. All hope is not lost. We keep hope alive because at the end of the day, Nigeria must survive. What we want to see is that in this lifetime, Nigeria will be able to have free, fair, and credible elections. It has happened before. It can happen again if we have we have the political will to prosecute that. So I asked the question again, and I echo actually the question I was asked by President Dr. Abati earlier on. Will this administration be willing to leave a legacy in its final term of free, fair, and credible election? Nigerians are looking up to you.
Do not get a consolidation loan until you see this. Hey, Mario Lopez here, and if you're thinking about getting
After weeks of intense debate and protest leading to its amendment, President Bola Tinubu on Wednesday signed the Electoral Act 2026 Amendment Bill into law, setting the legal framework for the conduct of the 2027 general elections. This is also coming just days after the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, unveiled the official election timetable. The new law is expected to introduce adjustments aimed at strengthening transparency, improving logistics, and addressing operational gaps observed in the previous election cycle. Following the latest development where the president has sent into the Electoral Act, what is next? What is the future of democracy in Nigeria, given the level of distrust towards the build-up to the polls? Joining us to dissect these issues is Oluwole Tazeuzi, former INEC voter of education, and I also understand that you're former Attorney General of Edo State. Great to have you. It's also a delight having you once again. But we'd like to go straight to Dr. Abati with you there in Abuja. So just fire the first salvo.
Well, Mr. Uzi, thank you for joining us on the morning show. The act is done now. We now have Electoral Act 2026. But let me ask you, the law has passed. Does it meet your own expectations? Because this morning I was talking about expectations. Now, yesterday we had Mike Igini whom you know very well on this same program. And he was talking about dangers with the law as passed, saying that should the electronic transmission to IREF portal, should it fail in 2027, the lives of polling officers may be in danger, the lives of ad hoc INEC agents may be in danger, given the passion with which many Nigerians have approached this lawmaking process. What do you say to that other point?
Well, I can also agree more with my Commissioner, Mike Igini, because we have been in the trenches, we have done this whole thing before, we have been through this whole hog, and without wanting to be sounding like a prophet of doom, this is, I don't want to come back in a year's time and say, well, this is a chronicle of a story foretold. Sadly, we are going to be haunted by the ghosts of the past because there hasn't been any significant change. Why do I say that? In the past, we were involved in election administration. We saw the use of the card reader and the provision that was made by the commission in case the card reader fails. In case the card reader failed, we used what we call the incident form. The incident form, to record an incident, look, this is a card reader that is supposed to be used for accreditation, but failed. So rather than disenfranchise any registered voter with a valid card, we said fill the form, the incident form, and you're allowed to vote. Now that became the norm. That became the norm because people just ignored the card reader completely and then decided to use the proviso, decided to use that lacuna in the law. With that in mind, if you say transmission failed, then you allow the primary evidence of voting and scores of candidates is on the EC8A, the manual, the paper. Then people will just discard, and the presiding officer comes and says, sorry, the transmission failed. Whether he tried or he did not try, perhaps he has been compromised, he will say it failed, and so collation officer, returning officer, please use my EC8A, use the manual. So that lacuna now becomes, the proviso now becomes the norm. That is our fear, and our fear is borne out by our past, by things we have experienced in the past. When we say that we should not allow the ghosts of the past come haunting us, unfortunately, we have opened the gates wide open for that to happen. Otherwise, if as an honest presiding officer tries to transmit, and as it's alleged to have happened in 2023, the signals are jammed or they change the code and you cannot transmit, people might, the community, people around there might pounce on you and say, no, you are being funny, you have been compromised, you want to change things. His life, therefore, is actually at risk. His life and the life of all those young Nigerians that are put out on that patriotic duty to conduct the elections, they are now at risk. Even though he's honest, he's played by the rules, he has done everything as expected him, then or her, then you see his life gets into risk.
Yeah, but I asked you about expectations with the law now in place.
I think that's the point. Expectations, they're not much in terms of expectations. Not much that if you keep doing the same thing and expect a change in outcome, you know the definition of madness. And that is what it is. My expectations and expectations of many Nigerians are not particularly high. The expectations are that if people would do the right things, but we assume that because of our history, people may just not do the right things. Some people may not do the right things, and because of that, there cannot be a different outcome. We still don't know what happened in 2023 with the presidential results. The National Assembly was fairly okay with the president, both conduct and assembly. We still don't know what happened. So what kind of expectations? We don't expect anything different than what happened in 2023. Sad enough.
Sadly, what we expect is lack of transparency, shenanigans, stealing elections, stealing votes. I mean, that's what a lot of Nigerians expect, and that's just it from what was passed. But let's talk some real talk. As we speak today, please confirm for me, has INEC written any guidelines to follow this law that was just passed? And secondly, the president has centered a law in 24 hours. Did he read through it properly? Did the Attorney General look at it? Did they even clean it up? What did they even pass? Did they harmonize what happened in? Because, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure I saw anywhere where they harmonized. They just had a concert on Section 6 of Section 3, and I think Section 84, where they talked about indirect or indirect primaries and all of that. I'm not seeing where they harmonized line by line. So, did the president go through the rigor? Is this not going to open them up for litigation? Then, what are even the guidelines? What will you advise as the guidelines we should write around using this law that's been passed now? Did INEC even see it before the president assented to it? These are some of the questions.
Yes, Rufai, you rolled up quite a number of pertinent questions there, several of which I'm afraid that I can only speculate. I'm not part of INEC, I'm not part of the presidency, and but let us look at the circumstantial evidence to draw certain conclusions. As for INEC, no, INEC could not have written guidelines for a law passed less than 24 hours ago. I don't think we have that kind of efficiency. I'm not even too sure whether a certified copy of the law has been forwarded to INEC. I don't know about that, and I'll be very, very surprised, because it must go through a process. It must go back to the National Assembly, and the clerk has to certify that what was transmitted to the president is the same thing as what he signed. So what was transmitted is now the law. He now certifies that and then gazettes it. That process, I do not, with the speed with which the president assented to that, I'm sure they can do that in 24 hours. Yes, the speed worried me. Some people might say it was undue haste. We want laws to be passed with some certainty, with some speed, but when it's done, you make haste slowly. With the controversies that surrounded the passage of that bill, I thought the president should have referred that bill as passed, as harmonized, to his attorney general. He is a very distinguished lawyer. He's been involved in some of the most controversial, some of the most important pre-election and election petitions in this country. So well-versed. And I think the team in the Federal Ministry of Justice is well grounded. I think they should have used a tooth comb to go through that bill as passed before presidential assent. And also, I think the input of INEC after the harmonization ought to have been sought. Now that the thing was definitely a thorough examination of that, appraisal of that bill could not possibly have been done by all the people who should have been done. Is it open to litigation? Probably not. They passed through the process. The process is the National Assembly, both houses harmonize the variations in both bills. When they harmonize that, they send it to the president. It goes back to the house, the respective houses of the National Assembly, and then it goes to the president. So they follow the law. Where they follow the spirit of the law is a different thing. We did not see that committee, the harmonization committee, go through the disparate clauses as passed by the House of Representatives and as passed by the Senate. We did not see that. Whether they did or did not, I don't know. What we saw were excerpts from the reconsideration, and the House of Reps going chapter by chapter rather than clause by clause, or rather than looking at the disparities in both. We just saw them group, chapters 1, sections 10 to 20, pass, in a very almost perfunctory manner. You have had this bill for a couple of years. You've had public hearings. You've had inputs from all stakeholders, and you delayed it. The House, the president, the leader of the Senate, for example, had promised us by December it would be done. You did not do that. Instead, you brought it here, and in 24 hours, the whole process has just gone through. I am a bit worried about that. I don't think they did go through all the things they should have gone through.
Okay. All right. Based on this, what are some of the bottlenecks you envision, especially from the point of view of INEC? So one of the things that was raised is that the funding timeline has been reduced from 12 months to 6 months. And we have an election, a very important election to prosecute in January now, it seems, based on also the timetable of elections, so it's even been brought back. Do you think that INEC could be ready enough to give Nigerians a free, fair, credible election based on this new legislature and based on the timeline, the limited now timeline that they have?
I didn't know this at first, but insurance companies act fast after a car accident, and not always in your favor.
They have thrown a big challenge to the commission, a really, really big challenge. We keep talking of the big elections, the general elections, let's not forget that we do have elections in a couple of days' time. We have elections in the FCT Area Council elections, and usually they depend on the Electoral Act for that. So what law will be applied? Is it the 2022 law or the 2026 law? There's a law in place now, 2026. So, for example, this transmission, I don't know how prepared the Commission is to deal with the new law. They have to study that law. It will take more than a couple of days to really study the law to see the differences and the disparities between the 2022 Act and the 2026 Act. And I'm very worried about the efficiency of the Commission, and especially regarding those timelines. For example, procurement. Procurement takes the process. And under the Procurement Act, not only must you have a budget for any budget head you wish to expend, but you must also have the funds in your possession. They should be in your accounts before you award a contract. So I see no rationale for reducing the 180, the 1 year in advance to the 6 months that the National Assembly did. That did not come from INEC. It was not. I saw some of the submissions, the memo presented by INEC to the National Assembly. The reduction in timelines was not part of it. So I don't know why, in their wisdom, and whether they actually consulted with INEC to say, this is what we intend to do. I quite honestly do not understand the logic. So yes, INEC has a ready excuse now in certain areas to say, look, because the law was passed and it was passed so late, there was nothing we could do about this. I don't even see how the law enhances the logistics or the operational requirements of the Commission in view of what transpired post-2022. I don't see how, right? But let's wait to see and get a closer scrutiny of the law and see whether that happens. I don't see how.
Mr. Ose, it appears that the elections, the area council elections, municipal elections in the Federal Capital Territory will be a litmus test for the new law. The principle, of course, is that a law cannot have retroactive effect, but this law is now in place ahead of the elections. So let us imagine that they will use Electoral Act 2027 to conduct the elections in the FCT. But the question is INEC ready? INEC already has said it would use e-transmission in the FCT elections. Do you think INEC is ready? The same INEC that is just asking for about over 200 billion to cover technology procurement, to upgrade technology. Would they pass this test or fail it? Readiness of INEC.
Well, only time will tell. About a week or two, we'll probably come back here and answer that question. I've been far removed from the Commission. I've been out of the Commission for almost 6 years now. So I really don't know. I cannot speak authoritatively about its preparedness. I can only be outside looking in. I have spoken to several officials of INEC, and the assurances have been given that they are ready. They were waiting for the electoral framework, but preparations had gone on with the existing framework as it was up till yesterday. But after yesterday, the new law kicks in. In many regards, it's still almost the same thing as the old law in many regards. And actually, INEC has been doing transmission or attempting to do transmission right from 2019, 2020. The first governorship widespread use of transmission and the IREV was done in, I think, the dual governorship election of 2020. So it has had a lot of practice. And the law still says you should transmit. The difference is the proviso that if you transmit and it fails or it does not get to the portal, then you are allowed to use the ACHA, the form. So I expect that you should be prepared. There should be no excuse to say the law was in that regard. There should be no excuse to say that the law was only just passed, because it's still the same basic thing. The difference is the law seemed to suggest, it gave with the right hand, and that is that use e-transmission, now recognizes e-transmission, but take it with the left hand that in case that does not work, then this is the fallback position. So it has.
IREV, we've been told repeatedly, is a viewing portal. So whatever is shown on IREV portal, would that be the main thing? Whereas the law says the primary thing is from ECHA.
I haven't seen what was signed by the president, so I'm circumspect about commenting too much about that. But amongst the drafts of the bills that we saw before, the bill attempted to upgrade, if I may use that word, upgrade IREV to part of the collation system. IREV was not designed as part of the collation system. There's a portal, all right, and the portal viewable from the back end by the collation officer, by the returning officer, by the INEC officials. Not to the public, but INEC officials who first see it before it actually goes on to IREV. And that's part of the confusion. If they put IREV as, elevates it as more than a viewing portal, then it changes the character of what IREV is. So IREV has a dual role. It's both a viewing portal for the officials at the back end, but also a viewing portal, it's no longer entertainment, it's no longer television for the public to watch, but it's now upgraded, elevated to more than that. But it's taken off by that EC8A manual transmission that has eroded against that IREV or the other portal, coalition portal as part of the coalition system would have benefited us.
Indeed. Thank you so much for your time with us today. Very shortly, we will be testing the law, and all these questions around it being justiciable, whether it's just a mere viewing portal or whether by this new piece of legislation it has now been upgraded. We're very grateful to you for also speaking to us this morning on the assented Electoral Amendment Act of 2026.
Should these auto-transforming glasses be made illegal?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise Daily today. I'm Chamberlain, so.
Well, it's the day after the fact. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
Well, yes, the fact that the president has assented to the bill. It's now the 2026 Electoral Act, but not without response from different quarters, as you might imagine. Well, we do know that, well, not that one that I'm seeing, that I hope not. But Peter B is responding. These are among several responses coming through. Well, he thinks, quote, let me just say, he wrote to the president and said, look, what you hastily assented to is neither the will nor the aspiration of the Nigerian people. It reflects a deeply flawed electoral amendment engineered by loyalists within the National Assembly of Nigeria, an amendment that undermines the very foundation of our democracy. Nigeria deserves transparency, credibility, and reforms that strengthen, not weaken, public trust in the electoral process. Any attempt to subvert the collective will of the people is a direct affront to democratic principles and the sovereignty of citizens. Be assured, the resolve of well-meaning Nigerians is unshaken. The mission is restore integrity, accountability, and genuine leadership. One that reflects the true voice of the people remains firm. The future of our democracy will not be compromised. Well, the president did explain why he assented to it. The citizens also in that signing, well, is it mini ceremony? Well, they're all speaking about why they did what they did. Not that the people didn't see it, not that people don't know. And so it is what it is at the moment.
So the president's words were quite instructive. According to him, he says after every election cycle, we all Nigerians an honest look at what worked and what must work better. That's how serious democracies behave, and our laws must grow with experience. And he says, today I signed the final amendments to the 2022 Electoral Act. Quite a lot to say, and I think it's best you listen to him because it wasn't just a speech he read, he also spoke extempore. And I think a lot of Nigerians will want to hear what the thinking of the president is with regards to this controversy on e-transmission of results or no e-transmission. Here's what he said.
We will protest despite the rowdy scenes in the National Assembly and despite deep public disagreements over the future of real-time electronic transmission of election results. The new law retains a crucial caveat. If electronic transmission fails, manual collation through from EC8A stands. Our supporters argue reflects Nigeria's infrastructural realities, challenging broadband coverage and the risk of election day system failure. Critics, on the other hand, say something else entirely, that this marks a retreat from technological transparency and reopens old wounds about trust in the electoral process. So, where does this leave Nigeria's democracy ahead of the next general elections? Has the system been strengthened or fundamentally altered in ways that may shape political outcomes? Well, joining us this morning is Senator Victor Omoye, who is the Chairman, Senate Committee on National Identity and National Population. He is also a member representing Anambra Central of the Labour Party. He served and is still serving in the 10th National Assembly. He was on the floor when some of these arguments went back and forth. Distinguished, good morning. Thank you for coming here today.
Thank you very much, Shane. I mean, thank you very much, Chamberlain and Malcolm.
Well, brothers.
They're all brothers. You know,
It's
so
fine.
I'm in the street.
Well, the same family.
To come. Same family.
Very much understandable.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem. So, how do you feel about this decision by the president to assent to the bill? I mean, that's signing the bill is law now.
Yeah, there's no surprise that it will be so. Anybody who was expecting the president not to assent to the bill is perhaps not honest to himself or herself. The whole process was predicted to end this way, and that's what we have seen. All the arguments or controversies that trailed the amendment, particularly the most controversial clause, that is Section 63 of the Electoral Act of 2026 now. In 2022, it was 65. But the proposed amendment is Section 63, which had to do with mandatory electronic transmission of results from the polling units to the IREF portal. What we had in the 2022 Act, which has now been repealed, was a transfer of results in a manner prescribed by the Electoral Commission. It didn't talk about electronic transmission there. The Act provided that the Commission, which is INEC, would prescribe the mode of making this transfer. And in the election that we had in 2023, the INEC prescription of that mode was contained in the guideline, which it met. It should be transmitted electronically. That's the guideline. But in the Act, it says it is the INEC that will prescribe the mode. And after the elections, of course, with what happened in the process of movement of those results from the polling unit to the final declaration of results, it became very contentious that that mode which INEC prescribed would be the mode of transmission of the results had a glitch. They sold us because the results were uploaded and transmitted electronically. And then on that day, all the National Assembly elections, House of Reps and Senate, the transmission went without any glitch. The presidential election was said to have had a glitch. They couldn't transmit the result of the presidential election. That was what led to the litigation that went up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court said that the electronic transmission of results was not known to the Electoral Act. Lawyers have argued, even legal luminaries have argued, that the prescription which INEC made, that the result should be transmitted electronically, was a power it exercised by the Act, which gave her the power to prescribe the mode. So it is lawful. The Supreme Court said otherwise, that electronic transmission was not explicitly stated in the Act. So that was what led to the failure of the litigations that went up to the Supreme Court. So that's what led to this proposed amendment, so that the electronic transmission of results will be provided for in the Act, so that the Act itself will recognize electronic transmission of results. And that's what the whole essence of this amendment, which went the way it did. So looking at the whole thing now, there is no way one, seeing what played out in both chambers of the National Assembly, one will not be expecting that at the end the president will veto the National Assembly or say that he doesn't want to assent to the bill, because everything was tailored to meet a certain end. We were there and we saw it develop. Initially, the first bill we passed contained transfer of results. In other words, what the Electoral Act of 2022 had in Section 65 was what was passed in the Senate, the first one. The House of Reps passed mandatory electronic transmission of results as proposed by the joint committees of the National Assembly on Electoral Matters, both Senate and House of Reps. But in our own case, there was a glitch. If you call it a glitch. The glitch was that we couldn't sustain that important recommendation for mandatory transmission of results to the IREF portal on real time. House of Reps passed their own. So we had to fight within the Senate around it. It led to a rescission of the first one following public outcry. The Senate now had to review what it did, because when the Senate makes something happen, you now say the Senate. Even though there was division within the Senate, many people in the first instance agreed to mandatory electronic transmission of results on real time to the IRF portal. So, but when something happened and that mandatory transmission of result electronically was expunged and returned to manual transfer, or that transfer of result, not manual transfer, as contained in section 65 of the Act. We made noise. We went public. We said that wasn't what we agreed to generally in the Senate executive session by the ad hoc committee set up by the Senate to review what the Electoral Committee had done. It was in tandem with what the House of Rep had already passed. Then now we came back. It was rescinded, and electronic transmission, which they said earlier on that they didn't remove, they had now to agree to put electronic transmission. But with a proviso now. Yeah. It is the proviso that sparked another round of controversy, because we disagreed with that. Proviso, if you make a law and say that provided that there will be no communication failure. In other words, you're already proposing that there will be communication failure. In my view, and many other senators felt that it was a speculative provision. That proviso is speculative. It's not certain. You say where there is communication failure.
Yeah.
But
Senator,
open the door.
Couldn't your, the senators who opposed it, do you think they did enough? Because those who thought, if you felt it was ambiguous and speculative, couldn't you have said, okay, well, if the majority of them are bent on leaving this proviso there, in other words, then tell us specifically what is going to be the major determinant of when there isn't any network? What standards, what measures should we adopt to know so that somebody doesn't wake up in the last area and say, there's no network, I can't upload this.
So that is the reason why we opposed it. Because when you say, once this happens, you now jettison electronic transmission. What we have done is that opened the door back to anybody who will now claim that there was no communication, there was no internet or communication availability for you to upload results. So what it follows is that somebody can claim that and then do a different thing. There's no way you can hold somebody tightly to it that he must or she must agree that she has network or anything. So somebody can just claim it.
No, we all know that we can. There are certain. We're not in 1900. I mean, technology is so advanced now. You could even right there where they stand. You could see the speed test. You could see what facilities are there. You could see because and they keep telling us and they keep repeating it. They have several reports. These things are possible. Knew that look, this is a loophole. Then they prepare them and tell us, look.
No, the people who were opposed to it, who are proposing that there will be network failure, people that will be answering questions, not those of us who know that indeed INEC has been conducting elections and transmitting results electronically without any difficulty.
No, I'm just looking at the second option, for instance, because if they were insisting that this proviso must be there, because right now, just as you said, it's speculative. Anybody can wake up and say, oh, there's no network.
How do you determine?
Yeah, but there has to be.
Network has failed.
Is that because if the senator said that you people called the telcos, and then they all came to that conclusion, we were not strong enough. These things
who called them?
In the press release for the Directorate of Public.
There was nothing like that. It is a self-prepared.
Senator Mamidele's statement.
It's good that you are quoting those who say so. They are the people you hold onto account over this issue. In 2023 general election, all the results were uploaded successfully. We are 109 senators. We have 360 members of the House of Representatives. This election took place with the presidential election on the same day. And all of us, 469 of us, came to the National Assembly through electronically transmitted polling booth results to the IRF portal. So if we were able to achieve it in 2023, why should somebody in 2026 say that it is no longer possible? What has happened to the infrastructure with which those transmissions were done successfully in 2023? And we arrived in Abuja here, 469 of us, through that process. So somebody is trying to be economical with the truth, trying to make a case to sustain the sabotage, because this is sabotage.
Yeah, not all of you came the same day, unfortunately, because it would appear that in some instances the results were contested, because and clearly it would appear that what the process that INEC put in place also helped some of the senators or let's say lawmakers argue their cases effectively, so much so that eventually they were able to join you. A case in point, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, whose results were not declared at that time. Somebody else was declared as the winner. But let me bring.
No, but the foundation
Was already there.
The foundation was that same election conducted on that day, that particular 25th of February.
So I think it also goes to emphasize the human factor, which the president already made reference to. Yeah. That, it is human beings that would declare this thing at the end of the day, and it is still human beings we have to interface with, which brings to the fore this question of human interference. There's something you said, and I kept on saying, who is the question that needs to be asked here? You said this was the result of, this was we saw this coming. It was going to be, this was the result which the process was tailored to achieve.
Yes.
And I'm wondering who was tailoring this process? That is the question that you haven't quite, when you say was tailored, is it tailored by members of the National Assembly? Were there external influences tailoring this process? Who exactly was pushing this, engineering it?
The answer is obvious.
Have you heard about Pop-On Roofing? We need 50 homeowners in your area to trial this radically simple new roofing service. Did this at no cost to try.
If the House of Representatives passed this amendment without any modification, they passed what was gathered from the public hearings and joint sessions and stakeholders' consultative actions. They passed it. Then the Senate did not pass it that way. They changed. And so people were saying that, there will be now a conference and harmonization committee. I remember appearing on another television show in Arise News with Ruben Abati. They accused me of jumping the gun, that the process has not ended, that there will be a conference, there will be harmonization before the final done. I told him, no, I'm not jumping because I know where it is headed to. Because I know that the House of Reps will not sustain its position. The Senate, the House of Reps...
You knew that already?
I knew that already because these are two sides of the same coin. The House of Reps is controlled by the APC, the Senate is controlled by the APC, and when they come together, my word in that interview was that it will be a case of people coming together to harmonize their interests. And that is what has happened. When they were prevailed to recant from what they had passed, they now came back to adopt what Senate did. And it is self-serving, it is to serve the interests of the APC. There's no way anybody can think otherwise. And for the fact that finally it ended that way, the prediction was right. If they were acting in national interest, there's no way the House of Representatives would throw in everything they had passed as their own bill, and joined the Senate to come up with this one now. And they started saying different things.
I wanted to ask you a question on the issue of the transmission itself. It would seem that we paid so much attention to the from EC8A, or that proviso that the Senate added, in such a way that we have not determined, in the event that there is a dispute. Yes, some people will say that on the face of what the senators were saying and what the Senate passed, it was supposed to be, on the face of it was just supposed to be a backup plan, just in case. I know that you argue that it was not needed, and a lot of Nigerians believe it's not needed, but on the face of it, we're all privy to technology in our country. We know that many times it works. In fact, in most cases it works. But occasionally, there are failures. So, and I remember that when the Senate President was putting that question to members of the National Assembly, the way he put it was very interesting. He said, so in the case that it doesn't go, the election ends there.
It was just...
it was very dramatic, right?
It was just dramatizing it.
It was dramatizing it.
How can anybody say if such a thing happens, the election will stop? No,
exactly.
That's not what I'm saying. They have not averted their minds to explanations already adduced by INEC itself. I'm sure there is a video you would have seen where Mahmoud Yakubu explained this issue of electronic transmission. That the device works offline and online. In other words, when you finish the election, this from EC8A is the foundation of the result of the election everywhere. And once you do it, you do it manually. Once you count the votes, like the president said, you record it, sign it by the presiding officer, agents of the parties sign, and then copies are given to party agents. That is the foundation of the result. The issue of electronic transmission to IRF portal is a safeguard. Transmission of result to IRF portal is not a collation. So when they are talking about manual collation and all that, it has never changed. So the result that goes to the IRF portal secures the EC8A.
Indeed.
So that when you are doing manual collation from the ward to the local government, because the polling booth results, once you snap them and upload to the IRF portal, you have secured that EC8A. So if you go to the ward collection center and you add correct with what are contained in the EC8 that's in the IRF portal now,
yes,
the result will
be different.
Will be different.
And I think that
is from where elections are rigged.
So
during collation.
Distinguished. I think that one more important proviso was not added, perhaps in the argument for this e-transmission, which is where there is a dispute between what the physical form is saying and what has already been uploaded, because it still makes compulsory transmission. It is that, okay, when we don't see it, then we revert to this. But when there is a dispute, when you eventually get to the collation center and maybe everything has already been uploaded there, I want to believe that by that time, by the time everybody gets there, the results should have been uploaded on the IREV. Now, if you bring a physical form and there is a dispute between what is on the physical form and the IREV portal, the law doesn't state clearly which one should be accepted.
Of course, it was stated there that the EC8A result shall be the primary result that will be used in that collation. But you see, it doesn't work like that. Let me tell you.
Just a moment. The EC8A is the primary. Which EC8A?
It has always been.
The EC8A, the physical copy, the EC8A, IREV.
Yes.
They are both EC8As, aren't they?
The same thing, yes.
Yeah. So which of the EC8As will then be the primary source of collation? And don't you see an opportunity here for politicians to impress upon INEC to perhaps make a rule in regards of this?
No, the collection will be guided by the EC8A. This is the result. And during elections, remember, in every ward collation center, there is an ICT expert positioned by INEC with his or her computer. So once you generate the EC8As in the polling unit and bring them to the ward collation center, and you start imputing the results into the computer, when you want to add, as you enter it, the ICT expert enters it as well. There's an audit check of that result. Assuming the ward has 20 polling units, by the time you put in the results of the 20 polling units as contained in this EC8A is gathered at that collation center, you must agree. Because the ICT expert who is there will be putting it as the other man is, the presiding officer is, or the ward collection officer is making entries. If he does not tally, he will query it. That result will not go to the next stage. So there are safeguards already provided for in this. What the IREF portal will serve in securing the election is that once you upload it, it's already there. And when you're doing collection and somebody brings ECA, you don't know that people print result sheets. Have you heard it before? When you bring something that is not the correct thing, it will fall out of what is already in the IREF portal.
Indeed.
Are already established and secured.
Indeed.
So there is no reason saying again that this thing will be so, particularly as it has been agreed, even from the track-up I saw yesterday. The Senate President said that if you upload and it doesn't go immediately, that within a few minutes, that it will go. Or when you step into where there is service, it will go.
Indeed.
So what are you providing for again by saying that it should not be so? Since the result is already secured in the device, and within minutes, it must go. So there's no point going back to those proviso. Because the result is already established and is in the device. And within 5 minutes thereabout, it must upload. So that result will never be there. But if you now say, no, that if it fails, you don't know how long that failure will last. Right? People will manipulate that period of failure to even be 2 days. Somebody can now say, oh, it's impossible to upload even after 3 days because network never returned. And by the time you are making this case, all the results have been built up as they were bringing them, manipulating the collection.
And network will return when the results have been announced.
Yes, even sometimes when the results have been announced.
And the reason why some of these things are very concerning to Nigerians is because of the cycle, the system. Because if the courts were actually standing, if they were true to type, people wouldn't be bothered about some of these things because they know that what they present to the courts will do what they have to do. But these days, they don't know if the courts will do right or as it were. But some of the other electoral changes is the mode of primaries. So I think they're taking off that clause where it's going to be indirect primaries. It now has to be by consensus or only direct primaries.
You see, I was a party administrator. I was national chairman of ABGA for 10 years.
What if your retirement savings were suddenly worth significantly less? Elon Musk recently shared that high government spending and national debt could be a warning that the U.S. is on a path to bankruptcy, which means the U.S. dollar could rapidly decline in value. So if your retirement savings are in cash-backed assets like an IRA or 401k, then your savings could be vulnerable. And if you think that's...
And this issue of indirect or direct, no matter how you run away from the control of maybe somebody governor of a state in determining the way candidates emerge, you are just postponing you are disadvantaged. Because if you say that indirect, that governors will control the delegates, the same direct, the governor will now tell the party members where to vote. And they have ways of checkmating deviant action. You know, if you are the chairman of the local government, the governor facilitated to become the executive chairman, on the day of primary, direct primary, you must deliver who the governor wants in that mass movement of party members to go and queue up and all that. So you cannot even eliminate the influence of the governor. Why I think it is not right for us to determine how a party chooses its candidate in an election is because you'll be concerning yourself with the contest. Anybody the party brings as its candidate, what Nigerians want will be to exercise choice between candidate A of this party, candidate B of this party, candidate C of this party, and vote for the person they want that will be their representative or somebody that will exercise the power.
Not all the time, distinguished.
Yes.
In many instances, Nigerians are now interested, even though they're yet to join a lot of political parties, but a lot of Nigerians are now interested in the internal workings of political parties. They want to see internal democracy thrive. They want to see the best candidates being thrown up within political parties, because it would seem that the rigging already starts from within the workings of the political party. But what you seem to be saying is that the working is the done deal. There's nothing anybody can do about it.
What I'm only saying is that none is foolproof. Direct primary or indirect, none guarantees that safety we are thinking about. And that is why the court has had the view that the internal affairs of a political party should be with them because of these confusions that will arise when you try to streamline things. In the end, what you should concern yourself with is who stands for the election for your party. Because if you don't bring somebody who the electorate will vote for, you lose the election. So it is for the party to do their internal selection of candidates in a manner that candidate will win the confidence of the electorate. You know, if we continue to legislate over everything, then we will see that sometimes it will be impracticable.
All right, Senator,
these candidates.
Let's wind down now. Given what is playing out and the discontent in several quarters, can we count on opposition? Because many think that they don't even seem to be getting their act together. That if they had pulled together, be strong enough, then maybe the majority party will not have the effrontery to be carrying out with reckless abandon, as many describe it.
Well, politics is about number. And when you talk about opposition, particularly in this process we went through, amendment.
No, I'm talking about political party now.
Political parties. Political parties produce people who represent them. So these things, people will be talking the way they want, but those who are already vested with the authority to exercise this franchise on your behalf are the people you'll be looking at. When this matter came, we even succeeded because initially it was transferred.
I'm talking about formation of political parties, the AGC, the groups that are supposed to be pulling themselves together. If they had at least given or gone further and given that impression, or at least seemed to be well organized, maybe they would have thought, wait a minute, if we misstep somewhere here, there's somebody waiting behind us to snatch it from us.
I think the proper question to ask is what political reform?
When someone fails to pay their property taxes, the government actually creates certificates on that debt. You can buy that debt from the government.
Do we need to sustain democracy in Nigeria? How do we take steps to prevent the situation we have found ourselves in now, where the legislature, the executive, they are of the same party? In America passed through many years of reform.
I understand
that.
That's
a
longer term. I'm talking about right now.
Where we are right now, you have to do with what you have seen. The law has been passed and assented to. So that is what is going to guide the election. And it is only when the election is conducted in 2027 that Nigerians will then gather again and begin to push for further reform from what has happened. Because the electronic transmission wasn't there. It was our pressure and pressure of Nigerians out there that made the Senate to cave in and admitted the electronic transmission in part. And they put a proviso, which is still controversial. Maybe after 2027 election, things will play out, and Nigerians will now see that that proviso must go at all costs.
No, before that time, there will be the preparation. I'm sure you'll be traveling soon back home for congresses.
Yes.
Different people have gone. Yes. So that's what I'm talking about. Congresses are going on. And which is the viable opposition people can say, this can be positioned to upstage the ruling party as of now?
Well, the only thing that can upstage the ruling party will be the candidate you present. I've told you.
Candidates are
Candidate is key to winning an election.
Parties are what?
Yes, party is the platform through where you bring out the candidates. So if you bring a candidate the electorate will vote for, you will win. if you don't bring out that candidate, no matter how you do it, whether direct or indirect,
Did they not bring out a candidate in the last presidential election? Didn't we see, yes, even though they pulled their weight, but at the end of the day, it didn't sail through. So you just spoke about the influence of governors.
Yes.
So don't you need that aggregation
the
of
people
people?
within the Senate who went against indirect primary argue that their governors will block them. You know, so and if you continue to look in that direction, you miss the focus. The focus, that's what I'm saying, that the important thing is the election itself. Who is contesting for you? Who is contesting for this? Who is contesting? It's not about how you emerged as a candidate. The person who will contest the election is the person who will be clothed with power and authority if the person wins.
Don't forget resources.
You must make choice.
Power and authority without resources. It's frustration.
Well, that is saying that no change will ever be made.
No, I'm only stating what is realistic. It takes funds, resources to conduct elections.
Resources are important. But I tell you that in a credible, free and fair election, somebody who has resources, will fair election, people who have rejected money and voted for candidates of their choice, it will still happen.
We pray that
yes, that's what we should be aiming to achieve, so that this process that has brought us to this stage where we are will one day become a thing of the past. Civilized democracies has passed through this. Do you know that there was a time in America, a black man and a white man would not sit in the same bus? So it's like that in this electoral process. One day, somebody will come out and say, let's make the road straight. Let's make everything even. Yar'Adua attempted it, but he didn't live to see it through.
We appreciate the time, Senator Victor Omoye, representing Anambra Central, U.S. troops.
So wait, what's the catch? That's what most people ask. Hear about SMUD's brand new home battery
in the country. And so even though people keep wondering, they've seen the strategic locations of where they are landing and the logistics, the military equipment and logistics moving on. And then you see the figure, 200. That's quite a significant number. And not just 200 of any other country, but 200 U.S. troops. So it appears as though I think there'll be a lot more than is being circulated out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's actually cheering news that the partnership between Nigeria and the U.S. on this security support is thriving. That is very good. And the fact that the Americans have become comfortable enough to return. You know, remember that they had previous experiences, you know, that they had concerns about, you know, but so it is good that, you know, they have made the judgment and the assessment that it is safe for them to come back, and now they are here on the ground. And there's no way that they wouldn't help change the situation. There's no way. They have the understanding, they have the capacity, they have the equipment, you know, and they are going to inspire some reforms in the Nigerian military, you know, because they are coming as advisors. We have asked them to come and advise us. What I would say to our military institution is that they should do everything to make sure that this thing works. Don't forget why we are here, because we have a situation where Nigerians are being killed like chicken, and by ourselves, you know, over the years we have shown that we can't do this thing on our own. So the Americans are here to help lift up the situation. So my suggestion and my word to the Nigerian military is that to do everything to ensure that this is a success. We want an end to the killings.
You know, I heard some of the congressmen in the States say things like, Nigeria government has not done enough to protect the people, but then they're reaching out to countries like Russia, Turkey, Saudi Arabia. They wonder why. And then you know that to move a country's resources of this magnitude coming here can't be free.
Yeah,
it's got to be something.
Well, you know, so in diplomacy, you know, we're always looking for mutual relationships. There is
no more than relationship here.
Well, it is relationship.
Also some economic benefits.
Well, even in diplomacy, there are economic transactions. You know, you give, I take, you give. That's why the principle of reciprocity is always there. The point is that we should make sure that it is mutual, not that anybody is taking advantage of the other party. I don't see any reason why we cannot have mutual relationship with the Americans. Clearly, you know, we have a lot to learn from them, and we can benefit from their exceeding power, especially trying to secure what government is meant to do to provide security for the people. We need the Americans' help, and I'm very glad that this president and this government has found a way to make it happen. We just hope that the military will also follow suit and ensure that this agreement works perfectly and gives us security.
I do know, yes, that indeed we had history with the U.S. troops. You know, what you said about them having confidence enough to come back is very instructive. Yeah. However, we also know the climb under which they have come back. It's another administration, and we've seen what that administration has been capable of in other countries. So much so that when we listened to the Prime Minister of Canada at the just concluded Davos, I mean, his speech was very instructive. It would seem that right now we're now in that mode order where realism is totally at play. The world powers, those that have power are exercising power. It's not a question of choice. You don't have much of a choice. If this is what they say they want to do, that's what they want to do. And so a lot of Nigerians, while they are optimistic that this results, which you are very hopeful about, will be the outcomes that we see, that less and less Nigerians lose their lives needlessly to jihadists and terrorists and all manner of criminal groups and gangs. Right. They cannot just help but wonder, at what cost will this really be coming to them, and for how long? I mean, there's questions that we really need to be asking. How long are these people detailed to be here? How much are they going to be embedded into our system? So some people say, well, I don't want to be so cynical to say how strong were the systems that if they really wanted to get intelligence, they can't get it. But
should these transforming glasses be made illegal in the U.S.? Nobody believed me at first, but now everybody wants a pair.
It's one thing for youth, exactly. I mean, we had a former governor telling us how they were tapping the NSA's line. So if they really wanted to get what they said that they can't get. But it's one thing for people to do it codedly. It's another thing for you to invite people with your own hands and open up your systems to them, as the case may be. So for you, what reservations do you have about this intervention, this very kind interventions, or seemingly kind interventions of the U.S. government?
Well, I'm going to take the route of expediency. I don't prioritize those concerns, but I don't dismiss them. Okay? So and that's why we call on our people to open their eyes while all of this is going on. But if you look at the extent of damage, clearly we need help. Those folks in Benue, in Plateau, in Northeast, in Northwest that are being ravaged, they don't care who is trying to help them because it has become existential for those people. And that is the attitude that I take. Those points are valid. Yes, we have to be worried about how this exposes us. Are there dangers? Are there, factors that are not necessarily salutary to us? But for this time, at this moment, we must prioritize the fact that we need help, and these folks are helping us to save the situation. So I need those factors. Yeah, I'm saying that it's going to prioritize security.
What are some of the outcomes that you're looking for? It's very instructive that I think it's a day after they landed, a day after we heard that they were in town, or they had set foot on Nigerian soil, was when we heard about the attacks in Kwara State, in Woro and Nuhu communities, where, from what we even know, people were abducted. People weren't just killed. Over 70 people were killed overnight. And, over 100 people were abducted in those raids that happened in those in the Kwara communities. Very, sad story. What outcomes are you looking to see from their intervention? From what you know of what it is that they've come to do?
Yeah, so the outcome that I'm expecting is that we organize our military, particularly our military, in a more decisive manner that increases the efficiency of their firepower. Now, I'm not expecting that just because you have the 200 American troops and the advisors on the ground, that by itself alone is going to change the situation. No, we still need the president and the governors to get on with the internal reforms that we have been demanding, namely state police. Let each state be able to secure its territory. It's easier that way in terms of structure. We haven't seen a lot of movement in that capacity. And like I've always said, when the president wanted to do the tax reforms, he bullied his way through. We need the president to become more bullish on the question of state police. The Americans come in, we help our military to do what they know to do. It will inspire them. It will give them additional elements of force to use, help their strategy, help their training. But ultimately, Nigerians, by ourselves, are the ones that can solve this problem comprehensively. And one of the things that we have left undone is to bring about state police. Look, in May, it's going to be 3 years of this administration. The APC promised this in 2015. This is 11 years. It is time that the APC deliver their promise on state police. There has to be a wider, comprehensive implementation of security reforms that we got to do.
Let me quickly shift this in with regards to your expectations for the U.S. troops. Do you think there will be discrimination with where they intervene? Because this was about Christians, the first instance.
No, I don't expect that. The rhetoric, of the American, the Christian persecution is important for local American politics because the people that are driving President Trump are coming from the Christian right. When they attacked, as a matter of fact, the first attack that they showed on Christmas Day was in the in the Northwest. So I don't think that they're going to be limited. And they've even said, even people like Randy Moore, Congressman Smith, have said that, look, we're not saying that it's only Christians. And I think we've gone past that. Nigerians are being killed, Christians are being killed, Muslims are being killed.
What do you think is going on with Malam Nasser El-Rufai?
Well, I think what Rotimi Amici said makes a lot of sense. Amici said that El-Rufai does not have the capacity to hack any system. The man is just a liar. El-Rufai is a liar. Take it from his boss, Obasanjo. Obasanjo said the guy is a malicious, pathological liar. I think Amici right. He's right. The man has no capacity, but because when he talks like that, it creates an atmosphere that ridicules a lot of the situation and gives him that the impression as if he knows what he's doing and is on top of his game. And because he's also a very strong opponent, so he says all these things. But who doesn't know that El-Rufai is reckless? Who doesn't know that El-Rufai is divisive? He doesn't have the capacity. I agree entirely with Amici. El-Rufai does not have the capacity to bug anything.
But I can have financial capacity to get those who can to do it.
Well, and that is why I think the federal government cannot sit down and say that, okay, we're not going to do anything. This guy went on TV. So they're going to harass him. They're going to go after him legally. They're going to constrain him. He's going to lose his freedom for a while for his reckless statement. But there's no way they're even going to convict him, except indeed they bring real proof. As I've said that what he said on TV was not said under caution. I mean, it means under caution means that when you go to court, they ask you, raise up your hand, you are saying this, or, on the Bible, whatever you say is going to be, we don't do that as journalists. We don't say that when you come to the studio.
They should cut us some slack. Don't they invite journalists to come to court when they say certain things?
So my point is that, so what he said was not under caution, and he also knew what he was doing. El-Rufai is doing what he does best, raise alarm all over the place. But I think they should still treat him right. They should, it's fundamental right ought to be protected, even though we know that he is all the things that we know him to be. He's a liar, he's divisive, but he's still entitled to his fundamental human rights.
It's political season, so you'd expect a lot of this kind of back and forth from different presidents in different political parties, all to achieve a certain aim, many of which you may not even know what it's about.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for coming on as always. Well, that wraps it up today here on the program. We will see you again tomorrow. I'm Chamberlain.
I believe Thursday's over just like that. Thank you for watching. I'm Malfelgu Yusuf, wishing you a productive day.
Okay, still on the electoral reform. That's going to be my focus because we need to understand what's going on and what the take of the people is. If Nigerians are really ready to take on this government, because if you accept it again, like I said yesterday, if you accept the Electoral Act as passed, just forget it. There's no need to be talking about elections 2026. And I did see a comment, somebody was talking about the opposition. Do you understand what the opposition is facing in Nigeria with your government? This is why we are saying that the people, it's now up to the people, not just the opposition. You guys don't understand. You don't know what this opposition is going through on ground. Okay, yes, should they do more? Completely, I agree. I've come out hard against the opposition here. It's not new, So for me, I just think that Nigerians need to be educating themselves. Nigerians as a collective need to take this seriously because that's the only way this government is going to succumb. If you do not come out and show, as at today, I expected that people would even surround that National Assembly and keep demanding until they retract that electoral law. Some people say, oh, once the president passes, they can do something because of the power of the people. But I don't know if Nigerians have gotten there. This is why I put up a poll to kind of gauge where Nigerians are. But it's interesting to note that so far you have 65% of the people, right, saying that Nigerians are willing and ready to reject the fraudulent Electoral Act. I would love to see that in action. I really would. I'm going to wrap up with this video and we'll call it a day, and then we'll come back later on in the day to talk about it some more.
And one of the critical things that people have agitated for a long time, that the Electoral Act doesn't cure, is the presumption of regularity. The Electoral Act presumes that INEC has done all the right things, that whatever ought to have been done has been done. INEC is right, which is why it then puts the presumption or the onus, the burden of proving that the elections were irregular or that there were irregularities on the petitioner who goes to court to argue. So even when we see any sort of irregularities. Look, our law presumes that INEC was right. Our law presumes that INEC was right. We have long agitated that remove that presumption of regularity. Let it be INEC that has to prove that they abided by our guidelines, they abided by the provisions of the law, we did the things that we were supposed to do. Instead, our law, and this is not a new thing, but we were hoping that this should have been cured in the current Electoral Act that says that, no, hold on, Mr. INEC, you're the regulator. Come to court if we're challenging the outcome of the elections and prove that you abided by your guidelines and by the provisions of the Electoral Act. That didn't happen. I'll touch on something else that is a big source of controversy in this, and Yemi also brushed on it. But it's a big source of controversy from this Electoral Act. The Electoral Act has seemingly removed the power of the political parties to determine how they want to select their candidates. There was a clear structural process that said, oh, you could do direct or indirect primaries. If you were doing indirect primaries, these are the things that you had to do. If you were doing direct primaries, these are the things that you had to do. And it seems, at some glance, unless I've missed it, that has been removed from the current Electoral Act, putting everybody in the position where you can only either have a consensus candidate where everybody agrees, or you have direct primaries where all members of a political party vote for the candidates of their choice. Now, why is this a problem? There is no party in Nigeria at the moment that has a register of all its members. None. It doesn't exist. So how do you ratify who your members are to vote in the primaries? On the one hand. On the other hand, we all see we're in an era where there is we're seeing very clear, very sponsored interruptions of the activities of other political parties, where members of one political party are masquerading as members of another political party and interrupting the operations of that political party. We're seeing it very clearly. The question is, if that is allowed, if that is happening, how then are we ever going to have parties who have consensus on a candidate of their choice? So you have two things immediately that are a problem with the Electoral Act as is. I think that what this is a recipe for chaos and disaster.
That's it. That's it. Real chaos and disaster if Nigerians keep quiet. But anyway, thank you very much all for joining me. I'll see you guys on my next one. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Bye.